bring me in the image, date of birth and date of death and so on. So the query helper will give me the sparkle on the right-hand side, and I just have to copy it. Now, I tend to build my Listeria tables on a new page in user space. So I create the page, add the template, the Wikidata list template, that little bit of yellow at the top there, and then paste in the sparkle query, which is the blue. And then underneath, you just have a little section where you tell the tool whether you want the red list only or the blue links as well, how to sort your list, and then what to call the columns. Which looks a bit intimidating, but it's not as hard as it looks. And I highly recommend that you can go and look at Listeria tables that other people have made and copy those. So find one that looks roughly like what you want, and then just adapt it is probably the easiest way to get started. So after you've got your top template, the Wikidata list template, you must remember to put in the Wikidata list end template at the bottom. And so what the tool will do once you've saved your page and run the tool, it'll put all your data in the middle of those two templates. And it looks something like this. So this is the early medical women one that I just showed you the sparkle for. And I've created this list because I need to fill in some of this data before I can even begin to think about who might be notable enough to warrant a page on Wikipedia. But it gives me a link to the biography, and I can see what data is already in and what isn't. And that's, a nice little table that I'll come back to again. One that I come back to again and again over several years is this one, Female Professors of New Zealand. So every year when the different universities release their, who's just been promoted to full professor, I'll go and put all those statements into Wikidata. And then through the year, I also add other award lists that I find. And so do other editors. They add awards to Wikidata all the time. And so this table is showing me who's won particular awards and is a full professor at a university and whether they've got an image. And I can go through and decide, who is there that might have enough coverage to meet notability requirements. But of course, besides creating read lists or a list of articles to improve, you can also actually create list articles with Listeria. I've only done this a couple of times. This example here is a list of historic places in one particular town in New Zealand, because some years ago, somebody put up the whole list of historic buildings in New Zealand into Wikidata. So we were then able to give us the buildings in this particular area. And I created it as a Listeria in user space first so that I could...
Hi, Tamsin. Oh. So sorry to interrupt, but we can't see your screen moving anymore.
Oh, that's not good.
It's back. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's see. If I stop sharing and start again, maybe we can see if it works again. When did it stop working?
A few minutes ago.
A few minutes ago. Okay, well, I'll bring up the slides again. You can tell me where to go back to. What did you see the creating read lists before then or after then?
I think you can go back to, yes, this list. This. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. I'll start here. I'm sorry about that. Let's hope it continues working for the rest of it. Let me know if it doesn't. So what was I saying about this one? Yes, so this was the example I showed the sparkle for, and I have some data to fill in here before this is a particularly useful table. But the next one I was showing you was this list of female professors in New Zealand. Can you see that now?
Yes, it works now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this list shows awards that people have won, so that it's combining data I've put in with data that other editors are putting in, and helps me decide who is notable for Wikipedia. And I've shared the read lists that I make on women. I share into the Women in Red set of read lists that they have, a massive selection of read lists, so that other people can use them as well to find people they might want to write pages for. And then I was talking about using Listeria to create list articles themselves rather than working lists. So this one here is Historic Places at Hokitika. And I created it in user space as a Listeria article so that I could coordinate with other editors about which places might be missing because there's something wrong with their Wikidata, and what order we wanted the columns in and what we didn't want to include, and so on. And then I moved it across to main space in Wikipedia. Now, in English Wikipedia, as soon as you put a Listeria table into main space, it stops being a dynamic table. And so from that point on, you have to update it manually. But it still can be a useful tool for creating the list in the first place, especially if you want to work on it with other people. So Petscan was the second tool that I wanted to talk about. It works quite differently. And its superpower is being able to combine data from different places. So it can query across Wikimedia projects. So for instance, if you want to build a specific list, say English Wikipedia pages that are in 2 different categories, less than a certain size, with an info box in a particular wiki project, and where there's something like a coordinate on the Wikidata item, you can do that with Petscan. And if you think about the sources of the data for that, you're going to need to be able to query information about the page itself to know what categories it's in and what size it is and whether it has an info box. You're going to need to query the talk page to find out whether it's Wiki Project New Zealand or some other template on the talk page. And you're going to need to query the Wikidata item to know what properties it has. And Petscan's great for that kind of query. I used to find it quite intimidating. This is one that I've only relatively recently used successfully, but it is actually less complicated than it looks. And one really nice thing is you can save a link to your query to use it again. So if you have a workflow that you use a lot, you can just save it and come back to it often. So it looks like this on the front page. You can select it not to give you tabs, but to give you one long list. But I find the organization of the tabs to be easier myself.
Sorry, still
not working?
The graphic's not there. Just the heading.
Just the heading.
Just on this slide.
Just on this slide.
Yep, that's fine.
It's fine now?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, how annoying. Thank you for letting me know. All right, so this is what it looks like. Now, one of the problems I had when trying to learn Petscan is I did not know what the syntax was. So I wanted to put in categories, but I didn't know, did I need to write the word category, colon, and then the name of it? Did I need to put square brackets around it? If I wanted to put more than one category, what separator did I put between them? And so that's why I've put this picture of why I wanted you to see it for the example, because it's very simple, just the name of the category, no square brackets, no word. And if you want more than one, just put them on separate lines. And it's a really simple thing, but when you don't know the syntax, it's impossible to use the tool. So, and this query would be one possible query you could do. New Zealand physicists who are also people from Auckland, and query it to the subcategory level of 3. And if I hit the do it button on this, I would get some results. I don't know how many there would be. So there are 5 different tabs for how you want to set up your query in Petscan, and then another tab for the output that you want. And there are lots of settings and radio buttons and boxes, but like I say, it's not as complicated as it looks. Now, can you see this new slide? Can someone just tell me?
Yes.
Thank you. So the workflows that I go through in the screen share in the video that I showed at the beginning and which is on my talk page, these ones here. So I begin by finding articles to translate. So I think I looked for New Zealand scientists who have an Italian Wikipedia page, but not an English one. And, you know, maybe they would be good ones to translate into English. Then I show you how to find articles to improve by size. So, of course, you can look for articles in a subcategory to improve, but by size is another way of doing it, which is quite nice. You know, maybe you want to find short ones to lengthen, or maybe you want to find really long ones that might need splitting up. You can find articles by a template or feature. So you can look for orphan articles or articles that are missing images and info boxes and things like that. I like finding articles with Wikidata that can be improved. So you can do things like find all the articles in the category 1938 births or something, and then look and see if any of them don't have a birth date on their Wikidata item. And another thing I love, so finding articles that are missing links from a list article. So we've been really good in recent couple of years at creating articles for New Zealand architects, but we also have a Wikipedia article that is List of New Zealand Architects, and we're not very good about putting our new articles into the list. And Petscan can do that job of cross-checking which ones are missing really easily. And I show how in the video that I made. You can find articles that have no Wikidata item yet. That enables a particular feature in Petscan where it will help you to create those Wikidata items, which is really nice. And it will use duplicity, which is another lovely tool for comparing the Wikipedia and Wikidata, so you can see which to connect it to if there's the right one or not. And then the last workflow I show is searching structured data on Commons. And this came from a suggestion someone put on the talk page for Petscan, searching for line art on unicorns. And I really like searching the structured data on Commons. I think that's quite a fun use of it. So the last tool I want to talk about, completely different, the Wikidata list tool. And I'm not sure this is very well known, but I've been using this a lot this particular weekend. So I use this for event kind of stuff. So it's a Google Sheet-based tool. It can interact with Wikipedia and Wikidata. And it uses the browser extension, Wikipedia and Wikidata tools. So you'll need to have installed the browser extension before you can use the tool. But the tool is not just the browser extension. So the tool has some custom scripts which were added by Andrew Lee at the Smithsonian. And they get the revision ID, the latest revision ID for the page, the ORS score, and the page views. So if you don't need those things, then you can just get away with using the browser extension and you don't need the Wikilist tool. But if you want things like page scores and page views, then you'll need to duplicate one of the Google Sheets from the Wikilist tool page so that you get those custom scripts. I will just mention I've been in contact with the developer of the browser extension. Firstly, I was asking, could we get the ORS score functionality and the revision ID into the browser extension so they're available to everyone who uses the extension? But then we've realized the ORS score's actually going to go away in a few months and we'll be using Liftwing instead. So I've asked him if he could actually just put Liftwing instead. And he's going to explore that. So that may be something that comes in the future. So what it's good for is good for creating target lists for events, maybe editathons. It's really flexible, so it can work off a list of names or QIDs or a combination of both. And it's kind of instant. So they're dynamic lists, but more so than Listeria. They don't update weekly, they update right there and then when your Wikidata changes or when you just refresh the tab. To update the API calls. And you don't need any sparkle, so you don't need to be able to define your list in any particular way. You can just type the names in, type the QIDs in. I will say it's a little bit glitchy. We hit sort of 12 hours a couple of weeks ago when it just, we opened up a Google Sheet that was working fine the day before, and it was just a sea of errors. Nothing wrong with the sheet, it just wasn't working, and next day everything came right. So it can be a bit glitchy. It's also only good up to a certain number of API calls. So I think Andrew set up to a couple of hundred people. It depends a bit, I think, on how many columns. I like to add a lot of identifiers into my columns to see what's missing from Wikidata. And obviously, the more columns I add, the fewer rows I can have before I hit the kind of limit of API calls that the Google Sheet will deal with. So I'd always recommend delete tabs and columns that you don't need to let you have more rows. And I think the functions and formulae can be a bit intimidating to start with, but they're nothing impossible to learn. If I can do it, anybody can, I think. So this is an example of what it looks like. Hopefully you can all see that. So this is the event that I've just been...
No,
can't see it. Oh, this is a pain, isn't it? Let me just escape again.
No.
It came with it? Okay, let me start the slideshow again. This is so weird. I wonder if it's a Firefox thing. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Annie. So this is just the top part of the sheet I've been using for the medical school 150th anniversary. I put in the name of the speakers in that first column, A, and then when they have a Wikipedia page, it pulls in the QID, the Wikidata link, and so on. And I've got, about 20 odd columns on there that it's pulling in from Wikidata and showing me the Wikipedia page score and things like that. When someone doesn't have a Wikipedia page, then I've just gone on and looked up the QID and put that in instead, and then it can pull all the Wikidata items from that. And you can see an example of what the function looks like in there. That's the front tab of the sheet. And the second one displays you a graph of the page scores of the articles. So if you were having an editathon around an event, you can see which articles might need attention. Maybe we would focus on improving the start class articles, or we'd look to see if anybody in the missing ones deserves a new page and that kind of thing. So it can help to focus attention. And then there's a third sheet in the Wikilist tool that lists people by their page views per year. You could set it by month if you wanted instead, and shows you their current headshots and also whether they're missing one or not. And that's useful. We use that to help us tap people on the shoulder this weekend and say, come on over to our photo booth and have a photo. We'd like to put it on your Wikipedia page. So this is a really good kind of immediate tool for event stuff. You can also use it, I've used it to create tables on Wikipedia pages for events, for editathons. So this is an example from an event back in March for International Women's Day, where I was building a list of articles that we could work on, and just copied the data. And then there's a website called tableconvert.com, which looks complicated, but isn't. There's just 3 sections on the page. You paste your data in at the top. The middle section gives you an opportunity to edit and take out any columns that you don't need. And then at the bottom, you can just copy to clipboard your nice little output as a wiki table. And that lets you create tables on event pages very easily. I do recommend, I didn't do this the first time because I didn't realize you want to put the square brackets around things that you want to link while it's still in the Google Sheet, because it's the easiest place to do it. And then you won't have to go through and put manual links on pages to get those in. But yeah, it makes this kind of thing very easy. So I like the Google Sheet for that. So those are the 3 tools I wanted to cover. Thank you for listening. These are my contact details. And I don't know how we're doing for time, but I did want to ask what other people use these tools for, and what workflows other people have, and what list making tools I might have missed. So I'll stop screen sharing now. Maybe we can have a discussion.
Thank you so much. We actually, because we just have a pre-recorded video planned next, and that has a duration about 14 minutes, we do have quite a bit of time to eat into if we want to have a question and answer or discussion. We did have one question from the audience asking if, let me find my notes, where have they gone? Asking if the page scores are using ENWiki templates or ORS grading.
That's a good question. I don't think it's using templates. I think it's using the ORS grading, as far as I'm aware, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Yeah, I haven't looked into the detail of what it brings back, just the graph that it gives you.
And there was also a comment by Lucas saying that the input fields could have placeholders to clarify the syntax. I think that was for Petscan, or was that for the Wikilist tool?
I was talking about syntax with Petscan, so maybe that's what Lucas meant. Yeah, it's just I found it confusing when I was starting. I couldn't find, I'm sure they're out there, but I couldn't find any good resources to help me. And the documentation just told you what information you want to put in, but not the syntax for it. Yeah. And once you know, it seems pretty obvious, but until you know, it's quite hard.
What do you, may I ask what you think is the most significant impact of using these list tools? What are the best ways that they are helping to improve or address content gaps, for instance?
Well, I think that's it entirely, isn't it? It's finding content gaps to start with, and then figuring out what to do about them. I mean, certainly Petscan, I can see, like I was saying, I've only relatively recently learned to use it in lots of different ways. So I'm looking forward to using it to improve things. Like it's a lot easier now for me to see how to find lots of orphan articles and learn how to make good links to them. Um, which is really cool. I've been using Listeria for a while, and that's really good for building red lists. There are millions of red lists in the Women in Red red list section, which is great. So I like adding things there so that other people can find them too, and sharing that that workload of, you know, this is work that needs doing, and we can all contribute in different ways. Yeah, Petscan is good for improving stuff, Listeria for building work lists, and yeah, I've only been sort of wikifying things relatively recently, but the Wikilist tool's great, and I think running editathons and stuff becomes a lot easier when you haven't got to make wiki tables by hand, or, you know, link all the Wikipedia pages individually. It's a lot easier to make a big long work list that people can get through. But I'm sure there are lots of ways of using these tools that I haven't really thought about, and lots of clever things that people are doing that I don't know. So we can all learn from each other. I see Jan said in the comments that there's some dynamic Listeria on Swedish Wikipedia, but they're not common or widely accepted. Yeah, I mean, I can see why we don't have live Listeria lists on English Wikipedia. I wouldn't necessarily advocate that we should, but it was a bit gutting to make one and move it over and instantly have it become non-dynamic and go, oh, now we have to update this by hand when things change, which means someone has to notice when it changes and needs updating, and you know it will get out of date. So I must admit that's limited the number of tables or list articles that I would make myself, because I would feel a responsibility to update them, and I'm not sure I can. Oh, he's put a link to current parliamentarians. I like that. That's probably a good idea. Yeah. We do that by hand on New Zealand.
May I ask what your experience has been for onboarding people to these list-based tools? Has it been fairly easy, or has it been intimidating for people?
I actually haven't done much of that. I presented a sort of preliminary version of this tool, which went much more smoothly because it was live, at Wikicon in Christchurch a couple of weeks ago. But it was in the sort of last-ish session of the weekend, so I didn't get much chance to discuss with people if they were going to use them. But I'm hoping at our next monthly, we have a monthly online call that I can sort of ask if anyone's started using them or needs help with them, or has any other ideas about how to use them. I often think with tools that you have to hear about it at the right time. So I can tell people about a tool and what it can be used for, but if they themselves don't have a use for it, the information just kind of flows through and is gone, and they need to come back and hear about it at the time they have a use for it. I mean, I certainly find myself, I can hear about a tool, but unless I can see how it helps me, I'll just forget all about it for a while. And then I'll be sitting there going, how can I query something that's on a talk page and on Wikidata? And yeah, and then you discover you need to know about Petscan.
I think in one of our previous sessions, I think it was when we look at Wiki Voyage, it was explained that Listeria is essentially broken there, that's not functioning for the past couple of months, or at least in some language versions of Wiki Voyage. So I was wondering if you'd encountered similar issues with some of these tools.
I haven't had that issue with Listeria lately. I only use it on English Wikipedia. I know other people use it other places. And so maybe, yeah, it breaks in particular places. I mean, there was certainly a period a couple of years ago, I can't remember, when Listeria was a bit broken and the tables were not updating automatically. And I think, it got a bit of a rewrite and things have improved. So, I mean, tools ebb and flow, right? We're used to to things stopping working for a while, and you always cross your fingers and hope that they come back again and start working, because some of them we rely on. I'd be very sad if Listeria or Petscan or the Wikilist all stop working, because I have built them into my workflows, and it's much harder to do that kind of work without the right tools.
Yes, getting something that's become so instrumental into your workflow, only to have it, if it falls down or starts to break, I guess can be quite disruptive.
Mm.
Annie Orense mentions that the Petscan video has been brilliant in preparing names for stubs for STEM editathons in Melbourne this coming Tuesday.
Excellent. I'm so pleased to hear that. Do you want to talk more about it, Annie?
Not really, but it. In fact, what I what I found myself doing more of, rather than finding names to add to the list, was excuse me, I've got a bit of a frog. Was actually re-rating a whole stack of articles that were still
Yes.
stubs when they were start and in some cases really good C quality. But they'd been created as a stub and they'd found a life of their own, but no one had returned and made any changes. So that was, it didn't serve my immediate purpose, but it was a really good thing to have done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's excellent. Anything that reduces the number of stub articles, even if it's just correctly rating them, is useful, I think. Certainly when you're a new editor and you come across something that's a C quality article in reality but marked as stub, it can be quite confusing. And you don't really know, is this what a stub looks like? Yeah. So I'm glad
Yes.
to hear you're doing lots of that. That's great.
Yeah. Also, that some were stub on the talk page. Sorry, they were start on the talk page, but they still had stub templates on the actual article page. So it's good to sort those anomalies out.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's really good. Improve our consistency.
So maybe if anyone in the audience that is currently using lists, or what kind of lists are you currently working on? Or after this session, maybe you plan to create some lists.
Listify the world.
Well, it seems to be wrapping up. If anyone thinks of any questions, as always, please you can put them in the chat or put them in the Etherpad, and we can always try and get those answers to you later, or reach out to Tamsin, DrThneed again. Once again, thank you so much, Tamsin. It was a wonderful presentation. I would.
Thanks, Danny. I'm sorry about the technical issues.
Oh, not a problem. To be honest, I'm happy it went as frictionless as it did. So yes, thank you once again. And then since we have a pre-recorded video from Leveling Up Days for the listing editor scheduled, I would suggest to the technical support team if you could share that and start the video. And for everyone else, please feel free to keep writing in the chat, or go take a break and grab a drink and come sit down. And yeah, let's see this session from DrFusi.